There goes Kay's husband. Kay's husband won't look at me. Okay, we are going to call to order the October 9 meeting of the Marin Telecommunications Agency. Welcome, everybody. Michael, as always, thank you for your hospitality.
Pleasure.
I never thanked any of the San Rafael people when we were sitting up there.
Would everybody turn on their microphones? Sure.
Why? I'm the only one speaking.
We're off to a good start tonight.
Yeah, we would like that to continue to happen.
You're going to get reverb off.
Let's have silence in the room while the chair.
Sorry about that. I better stop. Suki, call to order, please. Would you put on your microphone, please, in order to do that?
Director Sears.
Here.
Director McCullough.
Here.
Director Bragman.
Here.
Director Fraser.
Here.
Chairman Berman.
Here.
Director Coleman. Here. Director Theodoris.
Here.
Director Hsu.
Here.
Director Donnell. Here. Director Lappin.
Here.
Thank you, Suki. I better turn on my thing here. All right, director's comments. Moving on to item B. Anything? Anybody wants to know anything? Seeing none. Moving on. Item number C, which is the executive officer's report. Barbara, anything?
Don't have anything tonight.
No report. Greg, you want to say anything?
Yep.
Okay. You don't need a microphone with that voice. That is amazing. Moving on to item D, which is the consent calendar. It also includes a second amendment to the MTA-CMCM DAP agreement to February 28, 2013. We have a motion to approve the consent calendar, or does anybody want to pull just item 3?
I'd like to pull item 3.
Thank you. A motion to approve the consent calendar, items 1 and 2.
I'll move.
Motion, second.
Second.
Motion second. Discussion on the motion. Opposition to the motion. Motion carries unanimously. D 1 and 2 approved. We'll move item 3. I think, can we just do that in conjunction? Greg, would be okay to do that in conjunction with item F?
To do that.
Rather than take it first?
Sure,
I think we're all waiting to see what item F is.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So we'll move item D3 to item G, and then item G will become H. We'll move it down. All right, moving on to item E, which is public open time. This is for matters that are not on the agenda. If you're here to speak about items F or D3, save those. Anybody? Okay, seeing none, we're going to close the public hearing. Move right on to item F, which is the MTA-CMCM Dedicated Access Provider Agreement considerations, funding, and related items. Barbara.
Yes, just a very short staff report on this. At our last meeting, the board suggested that each of the members or the members wanted to go back to their councils or board of supervisors to get input with regards to the idea of providing $660,000 in franchise fee funding to the media center for a bridge period 2013 through 2017. I believe all of the councils and the board have met and had discussions, and so tonight we come back for a report out on that and further discussion regarding the item.
All right. No questions for staff? I have one. Go ahead, Larry. Go ahead.
Do you expect to take an action on this?
I don't think so. I could take a straw. I was going to ask a quick straw poll about that, and what I want to do is just maybe just go right down the aisle this way and see what people can report back from their councils that might answer that.
Well, I'm asking because it's a sequencing item from the thing that was pulled off consent calendar.
Yes. I don't think we are, but I don't want to also speak for everybody. I don't know. My understanding is that just from a review of public records that are out there, that not everybody's in a position to take action on it tonight anyway. But I'd like to try to find that out.
Okay.
And just, that's my own view of public records and people's council meetings and stuff. Okay. So, any questions? Any other questions? Do we have any feedback from, what did Ross,
Ross actually took a vote and approved.
That's what I thought.
To go forward for
Good.
the, not the hybrid solution, but the straight percent solution.
Right, so we know that Ross is in favor of the plan. So is that okay? I just thought, let's just go right down the aisle, myself included, and wind down with the two big ones down there. Okay. Michael, you want to kick it off?
Yes, we heard it in council, and is it working?
I don't know.
We did discuss it, and it's funny how the council was sort of up on it, but wasn't really, so they needed to have a little refresher. It was nice to have you guys there to sort of bring it all up to speed. I pled for our case with respect to, you know, our needs for money and the rest of it, your needs for money here, and, but it still comes down to that we do have a tax measure on the ballot, which says that we are short of funds, so we're not in a position to give away money. But however, we do feel that, or the council felt the importance of what's being done, and is supportive of it, but I think they're looking at it more from the standpoint of money that we would forward but expect return back to us. So it's more of a loan. I think that's how they're gonna look at it. And I am able to make a decision on that in a vote. I don't have to go back for further clarification on that.
And that would be you could approve a loan,
Yeah.
but not anything else
Exactly.
in advance, okay.
Okay, we did discuss it, and everybody in Belvedere saw the value to the center, and I would say people were willing to give money. Not everyone on the council wanted to do the hybrid method. And I think there's still some concerns about the center trying to come up with some of their own funding as well. So I'd be interested later on finding out if that's possible. But I think all of us can vote. I mean, we don't need the whole approval of our councils to vote, so, I mean, they were mostly in favor.
Our council asked to have this decision on this particular item extended. They didn't say specifically for how long, but we want to be able to continue discussing the financial benefits and impacts on our budget as well as on the MTAs, both for the CMCM as well as for the MTA in general. At this time, I don't need to go back to my council, but if you want a yes vote, you would have to, because I have standing instructions not to commit any general fund dollars towards any activity unless pre-approved by our council.
So your authority tonight is limited to just seeking an extension of time?
An extension, but if no extension is granted and we take a vote on
It's
this
a no.
item, then it's a no.
And how long, just for our edification, how long of an extension was Larkspur looking for?
I would say that our city manager seemed okay with the extension to February 28th.
Yeah, okay, all right. Tom, we had dinner together, Ross, right?
Yeah,
You
so
just
we
looked
didn't
at-
talk about it, so we don't have any.
No, we didn't. We looked at the back of my head and finally realized it was not a good scene for him to be looking at. So I turned around and sat next to him. It was more social that way.
So we had a presentation, and Michael and Barbara and the group came to city council, and it was illuminating, and we had a discussion on it. In general, of course, Sausalito was in favor of both the idea of.
Oh, wait. So, of course, Sausalito.
Oh,
was
wait,
it,
no,
right?
wait, let me get
Okay.
it through rather than, I don't want to get stuck on one word and take that. But we certainly are supportive of the media center and such, but I think and right now, I'd say in terms of if you're taking a poll on authority, our council was clear that we were not to authorize any outright grants of funds to the media center. I had authority to vote for possible advances to help them through the crisis. And of course, if there's anything else that we come up with at this council meeting, then that's going to be something that will be in my discretion. But in terms of the vote on whether we just give a grant, the answer is no, but we would advance funds
So
possibly.
you're with Corte Madera on the
Yeah,
loan?
I think very much.
Okay, thank you.
In San Anselmo, unfortunately, the discussion was at the tail end of a very long meeting that went to 12:45. And, but the media center did a terrific job of explaining the situation and where the funds went, et cetera. And we had a long discussion about additional fundraising and the responsibility that the media center has in order to do that. We also talked about a possible loan, but then we just kept going back to the fact that we wanted to see some good faith on their side to be able to consistently raise the money. But San Anselmo voted to support it.
Okay. Mill Valley is like San Anselmo, right down to the tail end of a long meeting. In fact, we were approving our general plan, our new general plan, passing
the sun came up.
resolutions. 2 years of work, and these guys are sitting out there waiting to speak.
Holy mother.
So it was just, I left at 1 AM. But I have all the authority to do anything I want tonight. Hybrid, non-hybrid, you know, whatever the staff report asks for, so we're with you.
Timron had a presentation from Michael and Barbara, which was very much appreciated. The council supports CMCM. The council would be in favor of CMCM getting support from the town, but a little bit of a different model. One, the town would like to see a real earnest effort on a sustainable fundraising program by CMCM. You know, we've had false starts or starts and stops, and who knows for what reason, but they would like to see them, as other nonprofits, go out there and really work hard from a develop a fund source, a long-term fund source if possible. If the hybrid program comes up for a vote, I'd cast a vote that the initial funds, the $110,000, comes out of the reserves of CMCM, and then the municipalities would pick up the balance. Not that the municipalities come forward with the $10,000, so it's a little bit of a shift. So in essence, CMCM has more skin in the game, so they come up with a hybrid amount, and then the municipalities come up with the balance. So I have the ability to vote in that fashion. The hybrid model that was presented initially, if that comes up, I would vote no. That's where we are.
So wait, so no, and what if it's not the hybrid model?
I would vote yes.
You would, so not the hybrid model, you vote yes. Hybrid model, yes, if the 110 comes out of our reserves.
Correct.
Okay. That's actually pretty good. All right. Larry, please.
Yeah, Fairfax, the only jurisdiction which actually uses the Community Media Center to equip its meetings and to staff its meetings.
I beg to differ.
Oh,
Senator
okay.
Lopez, too.
Okay, sorry. We have expanded the use of CMCM. We have Planning Commission now being broadcast, and we are in favor of either the straight percentage or the hybrid. I've got authority to vote in favor of either one
All right. Kate, ladies first. How about that?
Very thoughtful. So the county fully supports funding for CMCM, whether through a hybrid or a percentage, either way, and I am fully voting.
Andrew?
Is this the last but not least?
No, it's, we saved the best for
And the
last.
best for last.
Saved the best for last.
Well, first of all, I want to say thank you to the Media Center. A lot of you folks, people that I see here now, were at in our conference room on Monday evening when we had our study session. And my biggest regret about the study session is that we were so short on time that perhaps the fullest possible discussion wasn't really enabled. And also I regret the fact that our presentation came late in this process. So the study session occurred on Monday. Our meeting is here 48 hours later. The bottom line is it's sort of twofold. It didn't leave us the time we need to fully consider the request, that is, we as a council. And also we were cognizant of our city manager's request that we put this over to allow her the time to consult with her department heads, get to our mid-year budget review, share where we are financially as a city, so that the council can review its own priorities, its spending priorities in light of other needs within the city, and make this decision in the context of those priorities. That mid-year review typically happens sometime in February, which means that sort of now to circle back to this, the city of San Rafael's preference here, is that we not take action. That is, the MTA, or their request is that I vote in favor of not taking action at this time on the pending request, but instead put that request over until probably, if I have my meeting scheduled correctly for the MTA, it would be the April meeting. So we meet in February, then we meet in April, to the April time period. So the DAC would be extended until April, and this discussion would be extended until April, so that the city of San Rafael could do its mid-year financial review in February. That is where we came out, and it's really a product of not being able to fully consider this, and then to share the results of that consideration and any decisions from that with me in the last 48 hours.
So we've got, and I'm gonna open up a public hearing, by the way. I just wanted to get a quick straw poll. We've got, yeah, Tom?
I'd like to make one clarification though.
Sure.
Do you mind?
No.
I didn't realize, my understanding that was that the hybrid model was off the table. In the packet, it says that we can't do a hybrid unless we change the formation agreement. Just to be on the record, we're against any form of the hybrid model. I had just been, maybe I misunderstood, but I thought it was off the table. And but I think, as it says, is that correct, that it would take a 100% vote and a change of the formation agreement, so I would think that's essentially off the table, since we certainly would be one, and I hear other voices that would not go for the hybrid
Right.
model.
Yeah, no, what I tallied up here was 7 can say yes tonight to a non-hybrid, to a percentage, a pro rata model, but it's not enough of the dollars anyway, so we don't have a vote to pass it tonight. To straw poll. 2 would say extend, so they could provide more time for consideration, and 2 would at least be willing to advance franchise fees on a pro rata basis as a loan, right? Right? Okay. Let's open up a public hearing on this. You sort of heard where all the cities are at, and then we'll have to bring it back to the board for some discussion and deliberation. All right? Who wants to, anybody want to speak from the public? Yeah. Bruce, you haven't been here in a while. Come on up.
I've missed you guys.
You get me nervous when you walk in the door.
Yeah, well, come up there, here?
No, right in your chair, wherever you feel comfortable.
Well, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. Let's be honest with the public. This Joint Powers Authority.
Would you
Marin Tele-
identify yourself, please?
Yes, thank you, I'm sorry. I'm Bruce Baum, and I'm representing Media Action Marin. What I'm saying is, to be honest with the public, is this Joint Powers Authority decided in 2006 to take $600,000 of the funding that Comcast contributed. I'm trying to not use words like grant that's constantly being used because grants don't get paid back. Anyway, what you did is you took $600,000 of $3.1 million and you built the institutional network for the county of Marin. It's also known as MIDAS, and since I don't remember what the acronym is, Marin Information and Data Access System. That system was used to build connectivity for law enforcement, libraries, education, mapping, and the county's own internet, the county's own intranet. If you think of this as an 8-year interest-free loan that you got to build this wonderful resource for the county, now you got to think about it, it's time to pay back this loan. Why should CMCM take the responsibility of paying back something that was already funded, already planned for, that you guys, in negotiations in your settlements, decided that we'll take it out of CMCM? So I'm asking you guys today to be honest with yourselves, be honest with the people of Marin, and think of this as you use the money, $600,000, to fund your own institutional network. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. Next, please.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to thank the councils for having us in, and I think we enjoyed coming around to make presentations, and I think it was real important. I very early on I realized this was more of an educational tour, that we needed to come around and educate. A lot of the council people didn't know of us. We made the opportunity to meet a number of the city managers who also were quite unaware of the services that we offered, and I think a lot of good things will come out of that. So that's something I think we'll be pursuing more frequently in the future, and I'll be calling on you again to come and visit your councils. One thing, and I heard fundraising mentioned, that I just want to stress that is a commitment for this organization. We budgeted for that in this fiscal year. I thought I would be doing a lot of that in the last 2 months. We are going to pursue that heavily. One hiccup to any fundraising for any nonprofit is when your budgeting is, when you face delays and uncertainties, on major funding streams. And the PEG fundings are that base funding stream, and that's the issue that we've been trying to resolve here for a while. Recall that we brought this issue up in June of 2012 when the settlement was made. That's some 16 months ago, and we've been talking about it ever since. I understand we'll need to delay this process a little bit longer for it to come to fruition. But that also impacts our planning, it impacts our fundraising, and it impacts the development that we're able to do. We understand that's an issue. We're working with it. We're going to continue to work around that. We support you in this effort, but we're all in this together. And you just need to understand that a lot of this process has a negative impact on our ability to raise funds as well. But we will see a turnaround this year, I believe. And when I report to you our annual report next year, I think you'll see a difference.
This is just, your name has to be Michael or Bruce to speak tonight.
Good news. Hi. Michael Waltert from San Rafael. I'd like to actually follow up on Michael's comments. I'm on the board, on the member elected representative, so I represent the members. I produce the show, have for 3 years, and I'm on the fundraising committee. And I have spent many years selling advertising, so I thought that would be a fairly easy job for me. And it hasn't been. And I finally sat down with a friend of mine from Ross who's got enough money to fund the whole thing, and I said, what am I doing wrong? And in a colorful way that I won't repeat, he said, basically, you have a burning ship and nobody's going to throw money until you put the fire out. I don't know if that's true for every single person in the county that we can ask for money, because we haven't done that, because there's only so much bandwidth that we have, and it's a really legitimate question. We do have skin in the game. The skin we have in the game is the hundreds of hours that we volunteer, the shows we produce, the stuff we go out and do, and to shake money from the trees as well. But if we spend our meetings figuring out what we're going to do here on these meetings, then we don't spend our time at the meetings figuring out how we're going to move the organization forward, which is the only reason I joined the board, was to do fundraising. I am ill-equipped to be a political animal because I don't keep my mouth shut enough, or too much. But we will have a lot easier time when I can look somebody in the eye and say, we're cool. We're going to spend your money judiciously, and we're going to be around for 5 years. And I can't say that. So I'd like to, and as soon as we can, I'll give my word, back to knocking on doors and looking for money. And we're not going to be able to raise $300,000 a year, every year. I don't think that's really reasonable. We might be able to stumble upon a grant, but if we're out there asking, I gave $1,000, so I did, I get skin in the game. Yeah. So I'd like to be able to do more. So we'll look forward to that.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bruce. Let me just get, Rupert, so thank you for joining us. Just to catch up to speed, we just did we had a very brief, first of all, we approved consent items 1 and 2. We moved 3 to be part of the discussion that we're having on half here, which is the DAP itself. Right. We just did a quick straw poll around the table of where towns were at, and we have in the yes column folks that would go forward tonight and approve the funding as outlined. We had Ross, Belvedere, San Anselmo, Mill Valley, Tiburon, Fairfax, and the county. So not enough of the dollars, not the 75% threshold, but 7 members. There were no outright no's. There were 2 agencies, Corte Madera and Sausalito, that would be willing to advance franchise fees, at least as a loan. And then Larkspur and San Rafael would each like to have more time to evaluate the issue with their city, I think really with their city manager and council, but particularly in San Rafael's case, just at the city manager's request. But no outright no's, but just more time. I think the only difference between Larkspur and San Rafael is that Larkspur was comfortable with a DAP extension to February 28th. San Rafael has floated the idea of maybe having the extension go a little bit beyond, so it tied in with their mid-year budget reviews. I think that's, did I make any mistakes? Okay, you're up to speed.
Thanks for the summary. Obviously,
Yeah.
San Rafael remains key.
Yes, that's what we all realize here. Too.
Okay.
Okay, Bruce.
Thank you very much, Bruce Pagnoli, and you all know me. I will tell you that it was very interesting to go around and see all of your consoles and to listen to what you all go through. Some of it was more exciting than others. And I have a lot of respect for what you all do in terms of providing that service to your cities. No matter how much you're making in your fabulous salary as a council person, it's a real commitment of energy, and I do respect that. I will tell you that I'm a little bit disappointed to be at this point and to be custodian of all this equipment and to not see a real commitment to take care of it. I will tell you that when I was doing public access, when Comcast ran the facility, one of the things that the Media Access Advisory Committee observed and considered was that Comcast stopped putting any money into replacing equipment at a certain point. And it caused a huge decline over time in the quality of the effort that could be put out. They didn't keep up, and over time that becomes a corrosive effect. So it is something to consider because there's a very large investment there of public money, and it's a thing I've learned about in both physical facilities, buildings, and in equipment is it's always cheaper to keep it up than it is to try to recover it, because at a certain point you just buy a new one. And we do face some obsolescence issues, so those will come up. The Media Center is wants to continue, obviously, and the Media Center board has authorized me to negotiate an extension with you of up to a year. The considerations that we had were that we understand that this board here is going to undergo some personnel changes that are just the natural product of the elections that go on. And it has typically taken a little while for new members to fully come up to speed, to understand things. So it is useful also to have deadlines because they do kind of help to focus the mind. And we had thought February was good. We have no objection to April. And another possibility, and the reason our board said it could be longer, is that our understanding is when a new DAP comes in, it will displace the old one. We don't want to have it drag on for another year or two. That would be pretty much disastrous. But understanding that it's an educational process and we need to work together to find solutions, we are open to other solutions. And there were some other ideas that were tossed out and that could be looked at in the course of speaking to all these different consuls and listening to what the different consuls had to say. So we do look forward to working with San Rafael further to explore that, and with the other jurisdictions, with Larkspur, Sausalito, and so on. It is distressing to us that at the moment we are kind of stuck in terms of helping the consuls that did want to put in video because we don't really have the authority to do that at the moment. And we very much heard from a number of places that that would be something to be helpful to those consuls. So we have been able to help Sausalito, for example, to get on the air by providing them with some equipment that we'd already purchased.
Not to worry about San Anselmo, we're cool with it. We're patient, no worries.
Well, we very much
Don't put us in
appreciated
the worry bucket.
the way that your consul and others listened and then took an action that we very much appreciate. So we appreciate all of you and the time and attention that you provided, and we appreciate the support, of course, of the county, and we think that San Rafael can work it out. So, you know, I'll leave it up to you folks what the length of time should be. We don't like losing momentum, but at the same time, we don't need artificial pressure. So if it doesn't work for you to do it in February, we're okay going out a little bit further. We do worry that the budget cycle for these cities typically involves staff activity somewhat early in the year, and then that matures into budgets that get presented to councils at a later time. And as that year goes on, the options harden typically. So that's a concern. So we'd like to jump in and do as much as we can, as quickly as we could, to resolve these issues. And basically, we want to just thank you all for having us and working with us. And we're very much encouraged by what we heard from the different councils. And I think we made some new contacts, and we learned some, and we have more to learn. So thank you.
Thank you. Greg, nothing stops us from taking action on the money for video services under the current agreement, right?
No, it's been held in abeyance only because that was subject to the negotiations, but you could separately decide how to do that. It is, it's part of the, this money's in.
Right,
in
we've
our
been
current budget,
allocating that
so.
money to date.
Yes.
Right, okay, just tying a knot on what you were saying.
Yeah.
That might be, I didn't think so. Okay. Anybody else in the public?
Could I just clarify one item? Just on that
Yes.
item alone, if it was the pleasure of the board to forward that money to CMCM, we would be okay with earmarking it for
Yeah.
cities.
Yep.
We would accept that.
Yep. Which
Thank
means
you.
Kay wouldn't have to wait so much.
And others perhaps, yes.
Everything wants to please you.
No kidding.
Well, Larkspur as well. And others.
Right, and Ross, right?
Yes.
Right, okay. At least that's what we discussed last time. Okay, anybody else in the public? Yes, sir, please.
Yeah, I'm Dean Lancaster. I am on the board of the CMCM, but I'm appointed by the town superintendent of schools to represent the K-12 schools on, for the CMCM and to help initiate and cultivate anything that we can do to help support the Media Center. The Media Center does touch many of us because it's touching our children. Just about every child in Marin County is going to either have some contact, either directly or indirectly, with the Media Center in Marin, in San Rafael, or possibly in Nevada Unified School District. It is public, education and government. The public and the government pieces have gotten on a roll recently and over the last few years, and the education component of the PEG is beginning to evolve and expand. We have a regional occupation center that actually I think shares a wall with the Media Center in San Rafael. Collaborate very closely with the Media Center, share resources. In many cases, our students are able to go there and get real hands-on experience with equipment that they wouldn't have access to otherwise, and that's as a result of your formation of the CMCM and the funding that we've been provided so far. So I wanted to stress that the CMCM is, and the work that you do is having an impact not only on the public and the government, but also on education. We anticipate it growing. It's a wonderful thing, I must tell you. It's a wonderful thing to be able to have students actually get their hands on these kinds of tools and access and have a real-world, authentic experience, as opposed to listening to a teacher in front of the classroom talk about these things. We have students from our community school, which is really the kids who can't make it anywhere else. And in some cases, the kids who are having trouble staying out of trouble or staying out of juvenile hall. But these kids are there, and these kids are going down to the Media Center operated by our ROP and then going next door to the CMCM to actually begin to build videos and portfolios. Their plan now is to develop a monthly report about schools in Marin County. So you're going to be seeing kids who are tough kids, they're really tough kids, practicing, building, learning about how to communicate, how to speak, how to research, and how to put things together, collaborate, be creative, and put this together into a monthly broadcast of what's happening in the K-12 schools in Marin County. And if you've ever seen kids work in these kinds of projects, they really work hard at it because they know it's not just going to be their teacher that's going to see this work, it's going to be everybody in the county. It turns on their cable TV and the parents are going to be, hey, my kid's going to be on TV tonight. And so they're going to really reiterate and iterate the process as opposed to writing a paper, I'm done. I'm finished. Whereas if it's a video project and you know other people are gonna see it, they really work hard. And it's a self-esteem building, and particularly for these kids, it's a great experience for them to see themselves and to be proud of what they're doing. So I wanted to just say that CMCM is definitely touching us all in many ways, and definitely a resource for the students in Marin County.
Well, at least that was videotaped for you guys. You just play it for the rest of the council to have a decision. Seriously. Okay, anybody else in the public? Okay, seeing that, we're going to close the public hearing. Yes, go ahead, sir, please.
I'm John Reynolds from the Canal. I'm not part of the board. I'm just a person in the community, and I do appreciate it. We get a variety of points of view when Channel 26 comes on and presents free speech issues, and we can expand our consciousness both spiritually in some of the spiritual programs, but also politically, and in consciousness raising is very helpful. We have the internet, of course, and we have other channels that give us news from a different perspective, from Al Jazeera or Mosaic or something like that. But, you know, the local channel can provide that too, and that's very helpful. I do appreciate the educational material and the government material. When we show up at government programs, we can see how we did that's right, and kind of redo it and try to get a sense of, you know, where we could do it better in the future and that kind of thing. So I certainly appreciate CMCM and do what we can. Maybe we have to postpone it until April or February or April, whatever. I don't know. It sounds like we're willing to do that a bit, but be creative and make sure the CMCM is strong and viable and continues with the money it needs to help with the cameras and other equipment that is really needed, and it takes a lot of money to do those kind of equipment. So appreciate your doing what you can to keep them in being, okay?
Great, thank you very much. Anybody else in the public? All right, seeing now, we're going to close the public hearing, bring it back to the board for any discussion or further questions to staff or any deliberation. Larry,
I have a
please.
question. Just,
oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Well, I just on an easy one, I mean, I favor unleashing CMCM to equip these other jurisdictions that have been waiting to get equipped. Because, you know, I've always felt that the more of us that get the equipment and see what it does, you know, the more support it's going to build in the community. So I hope we can take that step soon, if not tonight. I mean, I think that's just overdue. The Finance and Policy Committee recommended that, I think, in April. So I'd really like to see us do that tonight, because I think it's going to sort of start moving things a little bit, and that's what we need to do. It's just move a little bit, because we're close. I don't think this is, you know, an incredibly difficult thing for us to do. It's just a question of kind of moving a few parts around, and I think we can get to where we need to go for everybody. Just procedurally, I assume if the hybrid's off the table, then splitting things equally, that is also off the table. That didn't get any traction, I don't think, in any of the jurisdictions. So really what we're looking at is each of us pitching in according to our percentage.
Yep.
And in that regard, I mean, I have no problem, first of all, waiting for San Rafael to finish its deliberations, but I did have a question about the weighted voting and whether that is consistent with the bylaws. So I would toss that to you. Bylaws really don't talk about weighting the votes. They talk about a number of votes, that we can require at least 6 votes. So I'd be interested to hear what Greg's views on that are.
You know, my thinking on that is where there is a discretionary program that you're considering here, that you could decide that it would take a larger number of votes to pass it. The alternative, I suppose, would be if someone wanted to force a vote on an issue under the bylaws. I suppose that would be a possibility, but at the same time, it seems to me that this board has the option of any program to say, we think in this particular case, we should require something more than the typical vote. And without having to go back and actually amend the bylaws themselves, because again, this is a discretionary decision you're making. It seems to me as a board, you can decide what conditions you would attach to that particular decision.
Wouldn't that apply to the funding division, the division of funding among the
The difference
jurisdictions?
there, though, is that, because that affected, though, not whether something would be approved or not, but how money would be distributed. And in the agreement of formation, and it's not just bylaws, that's the agreement of formation, there is a specific requirement as to how those monies will be distributed. And they are to be distributed now based on the amendment that was just approved earlier this year, that had to be based upon a pro rata basis based on the receipt of franchise fees. So that's why I think there where you actually have a requirement in your agreement that provides for how franchise fees get distributed, I don't think that could be done just by a vote. It has to be, there would have to be a change to the franchise agreement, or rather the agreement of formation.
But you think the board has authority to weight votes, even though that's not mentioned in our bylaws?
Well, it's not so much, well, it is establishing a threshold for how what the approval would be for a particular item. And my view was that, again, that since this was a discretionary decision, you could add conditions, and that condition in this case was that it had to be a 75% vote.
Of the dollars.
Of the dollars.
Of the dollars.
Of the dollars.
I don't see that in the
Can I
bylaws.
follow up on this?
But it doesn't, I just add one clarification on that, but that doesn't deal with the actual, that's a voting requirement, it doesn't deal with the distribution of monies. I mean, it seems to me that where the franchise agreement, the agreement of formation, provides for how the franchise fees would be distributed, that is a requirement of how the organization actually distributes money. And my concern there was, that went back to how we were going to make this change before. That my thought was that you would need to change the agreement to change that particular requirement.
Can I follow up on
sure.
this, on the voting? Because I'm looking at the agreement of formation right now, and it says very specifically, a majority of the quorum, which is at least 6 members, as you know, shall be necessary to approve any action of the board. And then there's a couple of exceptions, right? That certain actions require the approval of not less than 6 members of the board, and it has 4 different items there: approval of final budget, created of the assumption of indebtedness, et cetera. But nowhere in here does it say that thou shalt have 75% or 50% or 93% or whatever. It provides for specific ways to vote. So I guess I'm not following where in this document or in the bylaws you find a provision that says we have the ability to decide differently
Yeah, it's interesting.
on how we're voting.
Yeah, I mean, that's correct. It doesn't. There is nothing that says that for this type of vote it requires a 75% vote. But it seemed to me where we are looking at a program to decide whether to initiate, that if in order to do that, if the board decided that it should require a higher vote, I don't see what would prevent the board from having that as a condition of that vote.
Wouldn't that fall into the majority of the quorum should be necessary to approve any action? Isn't that any action?
It is any action, yeah.
And in some degree, aren't you disenfranchising some municipalities? If you're looking for a majority vote based on the percentage of contribution of sales versus them sitting at the table?
Well, okay.
And where does it start and where does it stop?
Well, yeah, although, and this is more of a policy decision than anything else, and the point I'm going to make here is that I think where you have a very divided points of view of how an action should be approved here, I mean, a risk here is if there is a feeling that a vote is extraordinary and there's a desire to add a condition to how we would approve this. I mean, the risk is, frankly, of getting the board in a place where members will withdraw. And that's a policy decision on your part. If you're trying to prevent that from happening, and that's not a legal interpretation of the document. But I mean, I think that is frankly, a risk of when on a particular decision that could be the end result. So I mean, I know it's an interesting issue here. It's being raised both, Larry, by you and also by Kate, as to how this should be interpreted. And because you're right, I mean, that's what the bylaws and agreement provide for as the basic voting requirements. And I have to say, and I wasn't here for when the agreement of formation was formed, that's not unusual to have a an extra voting requirement for budgets, for example. So in case of budgets, you do have to
Which
have
is
six
very
members. You have to
specific.
have 6 members versus having only a majority of a quorum. And it's not unusual in other agreements to provide for some other particular type of programs. I mean, I think this particular idea of funding CMCM was never contemplated at the time, obviously, because there was no nonprofit at that
We were
time
being nice to Senator Bell.
when the agreement was entered into. And so this is not something that I think was thought about at the time that this was done. But that is, I mean, frankly.
But wouldn't you think
this
there
was
might
not-
be a language that said, in some other extraordinary circumstance,
The board could set a higher
unanticipated,
standard.
at the
Yeah.
moment, the board could set a higher standard,
true.
and it doesn't say that.
Right, that's true.
I have no doubt in my mind that we could go with a bylaw majority or quorum vote, but that wasn't, I mean, I think it was a policy. It was strictly a policy decision at the last meeting that we were not gonna let, the worst case scenario would be to have 8 agencies find accounting in San Rafael, something they didn't wanna do.
Exactly.
Under
We were just being nice to Senator Phil.
%, of the dollars. So that's where, I mean, I know what Larry's saying, I know what Jim's saying, what they're saying too. That wasn't our discussion at the last meeting. I'm happy to have, we can open up that discussion again, the policy decision. I think that, I don't want to put Greg in a bind either, because.
Well, you know, I mean, the fact is this, I mean, and I have to say, I suppose I could be criticized for this. I looked at this when you were all looking at this, not as going back and looking at the agreement, as what is the legal requirements of your agreement. I saw you all deciding as a group that because this was an extraordinary decision and that you had a particular issue of smaller agencies binding the financial commitments of larger agencies, there seemed to be an overall consensus that this was appropriate to require that threshold.
Put me in line.
You know, I think, and that is a little bit of a judgment here as to, you know, whether we go back to making a very strict interpretation of our bylaws and our agreements, or whether the board does feel comfortable with actually having a special requirement here.
Yep.
And you know, I think that's the question now.
Hold on, Michael's next.
But no, Kate, you were gonna speak long before I.
Yeah, that's right, you were.
You're fine.
Thank you.
Okay, so basically what the lawyer is saying is the reason, for example, why we left ABAG. I mean, you have a gigantic jurisdiction, all of a sudden, the little guys feel left out, and you're right. If you start weighting things like that, pretty soon the small guys are just gonna fall away and you're gonna have 2 or 3 people running the whole show. But to talk further about what was brought up by Fairfax, you were in favor of releasing the funds, et cetera, and I do agree with that, but I just want to take it a little step further. You're not going to be with us next year.
I'm not going to be here in December.
You're not going to be here in
I'm gonna
December.
at the next
So the
meeting.
question is going to be the succession and all of that stuff that goes with it. And it just seems like this is an absolutely opportune time to enter into the possibility that we have gotten to a point where we are useless. In the sense that we have a few little things to tidy up. And to somebody's comment that it will sort itself out, absolutely. This is I think you said it. It's just some people are willing to give a loan, some people are. Basically, we're all willing to help these guys along. Nobody's going to wants to shut it down. We're going to make it work. That'll go away. When that's done, our job, which was to put together this thing, is over. They have a number that they get from Comcast. That's their budget. They can, in my opinion, they can spend it however they want. They don't need us. The only thing we need is to have a lawyer that can stay ahead of regulation changes, and they have one, and then they have to tell the cities, something's changed, this might affect your future franchise fees. If we get that information, I'm happy. I don't need to sit here any longer and tell them where to spend money. And I think basically we're just making busy time. Berman, when you're gone, I don't want your job. And I don't think anybody here, other than maybe
We don't want you to have it either.
No, thank you. There might be 1 or 2 people qualified to take that job that have your history of knowledge, which is really what this is about. You're welcome to it. If you're really chomping at the bit for his job, I'll vote for you, and then I'll leave. But I think we need to have that discussion. I think we need to be serious about, do we need, where are we going to go after this little thing is done? That's all.
Are you friends with Barbara Heller?
A little bit.
This is Barbara Heller.
I'm
This is
hearing it.
Barbara, right? I mean, oversight committee, it's public money, so you gotta meet at least 3 times a year, but that's it. Shut the thing down. Now, I don't say that in a bad way. It's a valid point, and it's a valid question to come up each time. Okay, others? Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Just to support that statement, we had the same discussion the other night.
Which statement, his or Larry?
Michael's.
Really?
Yeah, as an ancillary set of comments.
Oh, interesting.
Because what happened was the issue of losing direct control of your general fund money then led into a secondary discussion about, well, what does the MTA do? You know, we have our own franchise agreement in terms of how it was originated, and, you know, you have the broad definition of telecommunications, but, you know, as we all know, or people have been here several years, you know, we've struggled through trying to define what it is we're gonna do
next year
after
Yeah,
all
exactly.
this. You know, there are things that we had on our list where other agencies don't recognize our authority to do that. You know, so we haven't even really gotten any endorsement of some of the things that we want to do, although we said that, you know, we would do it. But I know, for example, say when you talk about technology issues, you know, the county was the first, you know, some of their staff the first to come back and say, you know, that's not your job.
We've also had some of that discussion on our council, and I would just suggest, not saying that we necessarily need to go that way, but certainly in this interim period, as we're trying to sort out what we're gonna do and fund them, that it may be part of this discussion, because this is the point at time that we're gonna need to do that. So there's, so I support that, including the discussion.
Chair?
Yeah.
Just a couple things before we,
Andrew, you go after that.
before we commit ourselves to obsolescence. Under DIVCA, we do have an obligation. There's certain criteria that are imposed by DIVCA, by that legislation, as far as how much programming is on our PEG channels. And there's just other requirements that are there that do need oversight. And they may not need oversight to the extent that we're doing it now, but don't kid yourself. I mean, we have come this far because we have been united in our action. We would never have gotten the franchise agreement to begin with that got this project off the ground unless this JPA was formed. But you know, things do change, and I do agree with that sentiment. Things do change, but I'm just saying, there are regulatory requirements that we need to be complying with. And one of them is that we're not going to get PEG funds unless we provide a robust PEG programming facility. So I think all of us, all the jurisdictions, even the jurisdictions that are a little, you know, less enthusiastic than some of the others, you got to look, what's the end game? What's the end game? Well, the end game for the community, and I think our fiduciary responsibility, is to build and support a robust community media center for Marin County. We are a forward-looking county. The future is here, and we need to catch up with it, and we're not going to do it by abdicating responsibility and going back into our individual jurisdictions. So we need to stick together on this until we're done. We're almost there, but a cautionary note.
Thank you. Andrew?
Yeah, no, I just to perhaps put a cap on the earlier discussion, although I will say that I have heard words generally similar to yours, Michael, from Barbara Heller, so you're not alone, and you're absolutely right, Andy.
That's why we went down from 12 to 9 or 8 meetings a year. It was, you know, we didn't need to meet as much.
You know, but just going back to the voting issue, I just want to say thank you, because when the issue came up at the last meeting, and we talked about the fact that this is such an extraordinary decision that we're being asked to make, and that is to, for the first time in its history, the JPA's history, to divert franchise fees over to the media center because of their extraordinary need, that we should change the voting for it. And my sense at the time was that it was a majority of this group that agreed to raise the threshold to 75% in order to, you know, frankly, protect San Rafael or the county, or in the case you cite, both, if the numerical majority overcame the financial majority or plurality here. So I really do appreciate that, and I appreciate the fact that as a body, we agreed to protect the interests of our larger members. Of course, at the same time, I do appreciate the notion that I've heard here this evening that, you know, listen, we have bylaws and amendment of formation agreement of formation that lays out a voting procedure. But I do think that this is such an extraordinary event that, to invoke the comment that Greg made, we wouldn't want to have extraordinary events come to pass where if we adhered to regular voting and certain municipalities felt so disenfranchised by the results of that voting that they felt compelled to leave. And I wouldn't say that Sandra Phil would be in that position in this particular situation, but I couldn't say that it wouldn't be. And so that I'm glad that we that we agreed to the threshold we did, and I think it's been productive here, despite maybe some misgivings about the fact that our bylaws or the agreement may specify otherwise. So,
I feel the same way. I feel like we took a bit of a, I feel like we took a little bit of an oath. I really do. I know exactly, I mean, I'm so comfortable with our powers, but I feel like we just sort of got to a place where we all said, we're gonna take a higher threshold, and I'm sorry about that. I'm sorry, I understand that. As long as you say we're gonna do something illegal in that, because that's what they're kind of raising.
Right, no, I
here.
just wanted to flesh out the
Yeah,
conversation, because
you're
we hadn't really
excellent.
discussed it in depth when we did reach that decision.
Absolutely.
I'm not saying it was necessarily the wrong thing to do for the reasons that you state, but I
Right.
wanted to make sure we'd been a little more intentional about it.
You are excellent on that. You're smart and legal, and I love it. That's what I'm saying. As long as you're telling us we're not doing anything illegal on that.
Well, look,
I feel like it's just like a brotherhood or sisterhood, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah,
You
you know,
come
I
together,
don't
we're
think,
all
I
in this together.
no, it's broke any laws here by doing this, but I have to say, I think, you know, if you would like, you know, me to analyze this from a legal point of view, is there a prohibition on you doing this by adding, making a decision yourselves for a particular program, because of the significance of it, that as a group you decide it should have a higher threshold of voting? I have to tell you, I never have looked at that before, frankly. You know, it didn't shock me when you all decided to do it. And I think I had to go back and research that, because there did seem to be a consensus of the entire board here to do that. You know, if, again, we can take a closer look at it in the meantime here, as if whether or not this raises some, you know, bigger legal issue. I don't see that, though.
Is that a bylaw amendment or a JPA amendment?
Well, it would require.
You were
I was reading the formation.
No, it's a formation agreement.
Yeah.
Actually, it would require not only bylaws, it would require actually a change in the formation agreement, which requires all of you to agree to that.
All right.
So I think that, you know, obviously, for there to be no question about this, the agreement formation could be amended to provide that in circumstances, certain circumstances, you have the right to, by majority vote, to increase the voting threshold.
I mean, Kate's raised the issue. I kind of feel like I would like to make sure we're not doing something.
Yeah, I agree.
All right?
Yeah.
And I think it's good that no red flags dropped when, you know.
No.
Yeah.
But no, let me come back with let me give a little more thought to that.
That'd be great.
And let me come back with a report at the next meeting.
Yeah, good, thank you.
Isn't the bottom line actually that a resolution would pass? You could pass another resolution changing it?
You could, yeah.
Yeah.
You could, yep.
So what I heard from the media center was no, not opposed and no prejudice by having an extension. Without picking the date yet, is there anybody that's opposed to an extension? This straw poll. Anybody opposed to an extension of time? Kate.
I just want to ask a question.
Kate, excuse me. It's looking.
Because I am
Usually you're here.
so very, very new at this. Barbara, you've been on both sides. What impact does this have on our budgeting process in the towns to extend this? I mean, where does that leave us? We don't do it now? Do we say, okay, we have to plan for it in the future, plan for it next year? How does that work?
I believe most of the towns start early in the new year, starting to think about their budget that they need to get approved in June of that year. And probably around April, they start putting it together and socializing it and that type of thing.
County goes in March. We're a little earlier.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it is. I think fitting our budget cycles is important.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I personally would go back to Mill Valley and say, put it in, account for it, accrue for it, because we've all said we do it, and then it'll be up to you guys to make sure these councils don't waffle. The 7 that are listed here.
What are you saying? What are you
Okay.
saying?
No, 1, 2, 3, 4. I counted 7 that are.
Cut out of them.
No, there were 7 that said they could do it tonight, and that's what Kate and Larry were saying, is we should take a vote tonight. And I actually think it's a great opportunity for you, actually, because you have more time to show, you know, it's a separate day. Okay, so anybody opposed to an extension? I don't think anybody had the list take a straw poll, right? And is there anybody opposed to the issue around the video services and having the money go over, the PEG money that we have in reserves, approximately $90,000, go over to the media center?
No.
Yep.
Earmarked for you do.
Well, I can address it now, or?
Well, this is just, go ahead.
Yeah, well, on the PEG fees, the way this has gone is I believe that Fairfax and San Rafael have been reimbursed. We have other cities that haven't. No, I'm sorry.
No, San Rafael did their own deal. That's it. San Rafael did it.
Let Michael answer first.
Yeah, no, I mean, we have production service contracts with San Rafael and Fairfax that covers the cost of the equipment. It's that's the arrangement that we've had with cities that we consider to be equitable and sustaable. And that's been the model that we've been using.
Fairfax got money that was held back.
It was no different.
Right.
It was the same PEG fees. It was no different than San Rafael.
I know it's all PEG fees, but it's different. The deal you did with San Rafael was completely different. You said you're going to take money that had already gone over to you, unrestricted, and say, I'll cut a deal with you. I'll pay for it, you give me services. Subsequent to that, though.
Same contract.
It's slightly different, though. One's we're withholding and trying to direct a little bit. The other one, we've given it over to you to do what you want. I understand what you're saying. It's just, there is a new one, at least in my mind, there's a nuance there, because that's the issue. Otherwise, we're holding the money back. If we give it to you now and say it's earmarked for cities, you have to go do it.
Absolutely.
That's right.
I understand that, yeah.
Okay, that's the only difference.
Well, maybe so. In prefacing my remarks, I've gotten myself on the wrong track.
No,
but,
it's the right
but
track.
essentially, the concern we have, and it's specifically for Sausalito, is that this $90,000 is earmarked for 3 cities, and the way you propose it to be that Sausalito and Mill Valley will wait till 2017, even though we were one of the earlier ones. I don't think that's really appropriate or fair. I think there's a few ways to address it. We can take the PEG fees, which apparently are above 90 and growing, and we can separate them. Let me finish the thought, and then we can beat it.
Absolutely.
And the other part of it is we can also take money from all of us and make us all whole now. I just don't see any purpose of making some of us who've gone ahead and really embraced the concept. One of the early ones to both have our city council. We now have, we're on TV. We have our planning commission. Yet we've footed most of the bill. I don't see the appropriateness of making us wait. So, I mean, we can handle it a couple of ways. I mean, we could certainly divvy up the funds. We could have everyone pony up that we all get our fee. We all get up to date right away. But I just don't see the purpose of waiting to 2017 for some of us. It doesn't seem equitable. And going back to the formation agreement, when you look at the formation agreement, everything's set up that it gets done, well, originally subscribers, but now we've amended that to the financial thing. And as we make some of these changes, and I agree on the vote part, I think we've had that discussion, it's the right thing. We talked about hybrid, and that was all with the right intention. But as we move from this formation agreement to making special cases, I think we get ourselves into trouble. I would like to take those PEG fees and find some equitable way to do it. If we can't do it tonight, but either, as I said, we find ways that we all pitch in and everyone gets paid now, or we at least divvy up this fees to some of us and not make it wait, or we all wait the same amount of time.
Do you remember the approximate sum of money that Sausalito is expecting to be reimbursed?
Well, for us, I mean, we're not so much, we would like to update. We took the cheaper way around when we first did. We looked at the price tag of it. We said we can't afford this. We put in a cheaper system. So we have the city manager move the thing like this when we do it, but we still I think right now we would just upgrade the whole thing, and I think we've gotten some to get up on the TV. Our city manager said it's worth around $5,000. We can work on the number, whatever the number is, but we'd want to come up to whatever a full complement of the.
Okay. You want to do an upgrade?
Yeah.
I understand.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you're aware, Thomas, but I mean I've already been working with Adam and Red. I mean I've worked with Red since you all installed that. I helped him choose the equipment. We're actually loaning you some additional equipment to improve your system. until all of this gets sorted out. So that's actually in process right now.
We appreciate that. And
I just
we-
sent a
we will
drawing
take
to
that
Rec
into
today.
account. We don't want anything
Yeah.
more than our share.
But we haven't abandoned you. I mean, we're spending time on this and we're providing support.
Anybody else on, thank you, Tom, anybody else on video services?
Just to clarify, Fairfax's position was we did get a grant for the equipment, but there was consideration to the extent that we contract with the media center to provide all of our services. And that's benefited us and I think it benefits the MTA because the equipment that CMCM is installing is actually owned by MTA. And what better way to ensure that the equipment is well maintained and taken care of than having our own media center handle it. So I think there's a lot of advantages in that model, and it's a model that's worked really well for Fairfax. And I think as other cities get equipped, they're gonna find the same thing. So it's just, you've gotta look at the whole thing, or look at it holistically.
God bless you.
Just addressing, Sausalito's frustration. And as far as the order of how it's been done, I really do think that if we unleash CMCM and give them this special fund to equip cities, you're gonna see things happening much more efficiently.
I agree.
And
I agree too.
that the frustration of not having that equipment that's been expressed will dissipate as they're given an opportunity.
So Larry, just to qualify it for me, when you talk about services, not only have they installed the equipment, but they also run it, is that correct?
That's correct.
And is that the same, Andrew, in San Rafael?
Yes.
And so is that an ongoing budgetary thing?
Yes, yes.
So.
Fees for services.
We're paying fees for
Okay.
services.
Okay.
And I'm just saying, since the equipment is actually owned by the parent agency, it's a pretty good.
I understand that.
Pretty good deal for everybody.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
Andrew?
Just a point of clarification here, and that is, I want to make sure I know what we're talking about doing. Is it that we're collectively deciding on whether or not to release the 90,000 that had been previously budgeted and allocated for the purpose of equipping 3 cities?
I was moving on to a second issue here. I kind of was taking the DAP agreement itself and saying, I think everyone agrees it's some extension of time. What the date is, we can talk about that later. I was moving on to video services.
So I'm fully in agreement, as I think I'm hearing others say.
Yeah, there's a little nuance with Sausalito and whether they get into how fast they get into the queue. Mill Valley, Mill Valley, yes, everybody's comfortable whenever we get reimbursed over the 700,000, assuming this agreement ever gets done in my lifetime, and the more than 700,000 in pay fees, then we'll raise our hand and say it was our turn to get reimbursed. That's where Mill Valley's at, but I'm fine with the concept of shifting money over at this point. Can't use it anyway.
Can I just offer that we continue to get some pay fees, so there's $98,000 in
So
the account.
if they want a $5,000 upgrade, they might be able to get it.
Right. Could I just add 2 things?
Yes.
One is that certainly none of the cities have really been reimbursed. That technically, I think Larry called it out, the MTA still has title if CMCM goes away to all that equipment. So this equipment is technically being loaned out. CMCM's original policy was that we wanted to do this if there were adequate funds and get this out there as much as possible, not limited to city council chambers, but also sometimes to city facilities such as a community center, something of the like. Secondly, if the money is released and earmarked for this purpose, it may well go a little bit further. I don't know. I do know that when we went out and talked to cities, there was some dissatisfaction, and I won't name the cities, but in a number of places about the process and whether it was fully equal. And I just have to tell you, I'm so encouraged to see that, because at one point, another incarnation of the MTA couldn't figure out how to do any government TV, and the fact that there's competition for those funds says to me volumes about where this county has come and where these leaders have come. So I want to thank you for that, and just commit that if this does happen, we'll make the money go as far as we possibly can. Mm-hmm. And I think the quality of service that we've been providing brings both authority and credibility to government, and it's important. And so I think in Sausalito's case, if there's a way that we can help you, we certainly would do that. And the same goes for Larkspur and the rest of you. That's our commitment. Thank you.
So, going back to the first issue again, extension of time, dates, is there any objection to San Rafael's request to go out to April versus February?
No problem.
No.
Right?
No.
All right, so I think we could entertain a
Can I just
motion.
make a comment on that though? Which is,
Yeah, sure.
Actually, shouldn't we really be trying to resolve this by the time you frankly go?
It would be great, but I just don't see it happening tonight. I would
Not
love
tonight,
it.
but by November.
Let's have that discussion.
I mean, I'm not-
What I heard
to me, frankly, I'm surprised that San Rafael is a holdout right now because the single town that benefits most from CMCM is San Rafael.
Could
I
you
don't know
well,
what
Rupert,
but
maybe-
that's the reality.
If I could,
It makes no difference to most of us.
Right.
You know,
Fair comment.
in terms of employment and in terms of the facilities, it's people in San Rafael who primarily benefit from this. And yet San Rafael is taking it slowly. So I would have thought you can get it in front of the council at least, and the council can make a decision. They may well decide against it, and that's fine. If they decide against it, then, you know, we don't get the 75%. But let's at least get to a point soon where we know where we stand.
I think you might have missed, as we went around, my comments on this subject, but what happened...
I apologize.
Yeah, what happened on Monday night, which is when we had our study session and the media center and its representatives and members of the public came and spoke to us and gave us an education on this issue. What happened is, as a result, is our council and senior staff felt like we simply didn't have enough time to make this decision between that day and today, one. And two, our city manager made a pretty compelling case for holding off until we do our mid-year financial review. We do a mid-year budget review in February. At that time, what she proposed to do is put a number of priorities in front of the council, including this one, and allow the council then to determine where in the list of priorities this particular expenditure might lie. It was the will of the council, given how little time we had, that we extend this out so that we can do that review. Their comments to me was, in a sense, if we don't do that, then I don't have the authority to vote in support of this, much as I might like to. So I hear you, absolutely, Rupert. If we can get this done, whether it's during Andy's tenure or just sooner, then we have more certainty about where we're going. But I can't vote in favor of it between now and that mid-year budget review.
Question he's asking, could you do it by November? Could you do it by December? Could we, you know, that, and I think...
Well, we don't do our mid-year budget review until February.
Right.
That was the
There you
nature of the
But
matter.
I mean, to be honest, Andrew, the reality is that your town manager, or your city manager, is obviously going to regard this as a lesser priority and not going to want to do it if it can possibly help it.
She does.
I mean, that's where our town manager was. Every town manager is going to, if they can, block this. So
We all need new trucks.
So there's lots of different priorities that towns and cities have.
Sure.
And it ought to be, you know, frankly, your council members presumably can read between, you know, the lines and make a decision that, hey, we know that our town manager, our city manager is advising against this, but do we want to do it or don't we? I mean, to me, we've got to shit or get off the pot on this issue and move on because Andy's going. And once Andy goes, this organisation probably will.
No, Larry's going to be the next guy.
It's
We
going to
know
be
that.
very difficult for us to manage
You
this
too.
organisation. And that
The
worries me.
Larrys.
The Larry's.
Yeah, not that I want to railroad you at all one way or the other. I'm fine with us not doing this. If we're not going to do it, we're not going to do it. But I just hate to
Drag it on.
lose the momentum on this.
Well, as I told someone here earlier this evening, our city manager has gone on record saying that she feels that there are more significant priorities in the city of San Rafael than this one. But in fairness to her, she also acknowledges this is fundamentally a political decision. It's not a decision of city staff. So she wants to make sure that that political decision is as fully informed as possible, and she wants to be a part of that information pipeline, and she feels the only way she can do it adequately is if she did it in the context of the mid-year budget review. And so that is where the council came out. For lack of a better decision or consensus, I can't do otherwise.
Well, I guess I would be in favour that if we can't make a decision by, you know, a month's time, that we reopen whether it needs to have a 75% majority. Not that I, you know, again, I don't mind which way we ultimately go with it on these decisions. I just don't see the benefit of waiting and waiting. That's all.
I've gone on record here saying that I do support the proffer of support. That is, whether it's 172,000 from San Rafael or whether it's hybrid or pro rata resulting in 172 from San Rafael. I think the media center deserves support here, and I'm prepared to vote my individual vote on my council in favor of giving us some franchise fees to that effect. However, it would disturb me greatly if the majority will here was to resolve that we want to reduce that threshold back to a majority vote. If the intention of that was to overrule San Rafael, that would bother me, because San Rafael has approached us. I've gone to my council, my staff, I've told them about the 75% threshold. It's been important to them. If they feel they're being railroaded, and that's how they will feel, I'm worried about the consequences of that.
Well, no, I get it. But on the other hand, the result is that the rest of us are being held up, which, you know, is fine within a reasonable period of time. It's fine for us to wait a month or two, but to me to wait 6 months over it, whichever way we come out, doesn't, to me, make sense.
Could we float?
How are we?
Hold on. Jim actually had his hand up next.
I'm just
And
wondering, in the
then I think
context
Sandy
of this discussion, is there another model that we might be able to consider that would lower the expenditure request from the various municipalities? It might make it easier for the municipalities to say, okay, instead of X, it's Y, and that Y, although money out of our general funds, is a lesser amount. Therefore, maybe we'd be in a position to consider it now as opposed to later. Because I think Rupert has a very good point. I mean, I just wonder, I'm saying to myself, are we kicking the can down the road? And I think we do a disservice to ourselves as well as to CMCM by within decision. Now, I respect where we are, and it's a serious issue for San Rafael, and I support Andrew and the council in wanting to really crunch the numbers. That's the right thing to do. But could we somehow maybe minimize the exposure that the various municipalities have? And one way, and we hadn't talked about it before, we talked about it at meetings, was, you know, can we get to a different threshold on the reserve allocation, or the reserves that we keep, and say, you know, CMCM, instead of keeping $500,000 or $550,000, I can't remember exactly what the number was, but if you kept $350,000, yeah, you're gonna get agitated, you're not gonna like it, but if you kept $350,000, and we put that money toward this $660,000, and then we subtracted 200 from that, all of a sudden the number that we're all asking our councils to vote on is a little bit less, and maybe, just maybe, there's the ability for those of us that have some anxiety with the councils to ask the mayor and the vice mayor, can we put this on the agenda? Because we want to reconsider it. And here's, we're a little less money, but here's the reason why we want to reconsider it. I just try to find another way for maybe Andrew, maybe Larry, to say, you know, we need a decision because we don't want to kick the can down the road.
Love the discussion. Sandy?
Oh, I was just curious
Kate's
for
next,
clarification about why you think we're being held up. And I personally, if we went back on what we agreed next month, might change my vote to no tonight. So, I mean, I think that out of fairness to what we agreed on in the past, I wouldn't say that's assured.
So my question for Andrew is, I'm certainly hoping that someone on the staff of San Rafael is monitoring your budget on more than a half-year basis. So I'm wondering if it might be possible. I understand your city manager in a perfect world would prefer to wait until by every 6 months, whatever the proper word is, review in February. But I'm wondering, given that I'm sure somebody is monitoring the city's budget and doing some kind of forecasting, whether it would be possible to provide more information, budgetary information to your council sooner so that you can make a policy decision, which obviously your city manager recognizes. It is ultimately a policy decision.
You know, it's a good point, Kate, and I asked about that. I asked if there's any way we can reasonably do it sooner.
Yep.
The information isn't as good sooner, and the information we have now after Q1 is that we're actually running negative to budget. So not a great time to look at it now, but can we take the snapshot in, say, December? Perhaps we can. It's just not information you should rather rely on. We also have another issue out there. When I say this is a political decision, it's political in part because we've got a sales tax measure on the ballot. That comes up November 5th. To take action before November 5th almost begs an outcome that no one here wants.
I'm with you with that, Andrew. I'm so with you on that one. That was the only reason why I'm being so like sitting here.
Fair point.
Yep.
Okay, further discussion. Larry, please.
We have that same point come up because we've got to have sense. The other thing is you want to take a vote tonight, it's no. I mean, if you want a decision tonight, that's what it is. We've already gone through the poll.
Larry, to respond to that, what I'm worried about, and Rupert, I'm certainly not blaming you for this, I think it's a healthy discussion to have, but what I'm worried about is the vote doesn't happen tonight, but in December when we meet, there's sort of a groundswell here to change the threshold to a majority or to whatever conventional voting is. And that really does change how we approach this decision. And I'm fearful of what that would mean to San Rafael and its perspective on this entire process, and to, for the first time, giving a franchise fee and how that decision is being made for it. So that's my concern. And I'm a little more concerned about process than I had before this meeting.
Yeah, but my point is that if you're asking for a vote tonight, we've already got instructions to go no, and that doesn't carry.
Well, it would carry if you went by the formation agreement. That's the discussion before. Actually, would carry if you went by the formation.
Unless some people change.
Unless people said, yeah, it wouldn't be, that would be horse trading. And I'm with you on that. I feel like we made a little pact.
Just to continue with what Jim brought up, and I'm 100% with you on this thing, is, you know, we give San Rafael what they're asking for. We should. We started the discussion that way. There's no question about that. But Corte Madera and most of us do not have the percentage of reserves compared to our capital budget that these folks have. It's extraordinary. They need to be on the same playing field we are, because it's like when I raised my sons. They need to feel what it's like to run the PG&E to pay the bill just because they don't have the money. There's too much money sitting there, and I don't think it's a fair. But I understand the need to have that emergency money. You know, I understand that, but I'm still from the old idea that if you got too much money sitting in reserves, that means you're collecting too much money to begin with, then you should be giving some of it back or spending it according to your budget. This idea of rainy day thing, I know contrary to what you're going to say, but I would feel better giving money to somebody who really needs it, as opposed to, I have less money than they have.
That's the first question that came up.
Yeah, I have less money than they have.
I know.
And yet it's like,
We don't have
and then
those
they're asking me
reserves.
for money. It's like, come on, really, seriously? It's tough. It's a tough call. So I like waiting, because I think we need to go back a little bit to what you're saying.
Could I just say, just a little briefing background. The franchise fees that come into CMCM are actually restricted, most of them. So a lot of the money that they've been sitting on are actually restricted under DIVCA or the original franchise for only capital purchases. So it does create a bit of an accounting issue, and in addition to that, they have been marshaling their money very carefully, because they've been using the interest off of the reserves to actually pay for operating expenses. So I understand where you're coming from. Mm-hmm. They're in a slightly different model than public agencies are. But given everything, that's been discussed tonight, I think it's imperative that the negotiating subcommittees get together after this meeting quickly and see if we can make some progress on finding the happy medium.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I think, that's the charge that I'm getting out of this whole discussion. We're close, we need to close the gap, and people, they're gonna have to make some decisions.
And to Rupert's point, let's get it done. Let's just get it done. Let's quit screwing around.
I agree, but I mean, I do feel it's better to delegate that to the negotiators. Yeah. I don't think it's healthy to be negotiating it in public.
Yep, fair.
But I think we need to get moving.
Yeah, and to your point, the extension, their reserves will go down, because they're going to have to survive somehow. So if there's going to be it's going to correct on its own a little bit there too.
And hopefully it makes it easier, an easier decision for you.
Precisely. Yeah, I just, I'm in the camp of, this is we all know what's going on here. This is a very tender discussion, and if you, I feel people are just at a point where you could tip them pro or con. I've seen it with my own counsel, but you see it, pro or con if you just push too careful what we do here. That's all. So I come out with the granting an extension and put the video money, the 90,000 over, and get the subcommittee meeting. You know, I got a general plan done on Monday night at 1 o'clock in the morning, Tuesday morning. So I got lots of time. I called Kate today just to say hi, how you doing? I called Huffman's office to complain about the parking lot up on the ridge. Thank you for your email, by the way. So that's where I sort of come out, and then with direction to staff as well to look at Kate's point and Larry's points about the voting threshold and make sure we don't do anything wrong there, right? So that's where I kind of come out. If somebody wants to make a motion or have further discussion, we can do that. And I love your discussion. I loved what you did tonight. Show up late and stir the pot. I love that. It's like my son. How do you come to the table late for dinner? And it's like, what did you just do? It's fantastic. I love it. With the accent and everything, it sounded so professional. The British people just singing it right in on us. Wow.
The Parliament is from Windsor. Here we are.
You could get out of your day job, you could get out and do a little stand-up comedy.
I'll be down here Friday. What's the Friday? Where's the
Friday night bake?
Friday night bake sale. I'll be doing the cookies. Okay, what do you think, folks? Where are folks at?
Staff recommendations, so you know what to do.
We want to do this step by step.
I know, because I blended everything. Go ahead, Greg.
The first step, I think, would be the extension of the DAP agreement. So what was in your packet was February 28th. I think now the idea would be to go to April 30. So
and nothing stops it from coming to us ASAP.
Right. So motion though.
Make that motion.
Yeah.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. We have Michael Cordemadera on the motion, Belvedere on the second.
Thank you.
Motion second, discussion, opposition, motion carries unanimously. Next we've got, go ahead.
Next item would be the transfer of tech fees for funding the support of the wiring at each of the local places of the facility.
The 90,000, approximately 90,000 we're holding back to be transferred over to the media center with the understanding that it's 98.
It'll be 99 tomorrow.
That'll be 99 tomorrow, earmarked for video installation.
It should be the amount that stood without.
I would so move.
Motion second. So you got Fairfax, Tiburon. Motion
And
second.
is that is, what would that be directed to?
You're gonna call your city manager tonight and say, get in line,
Okay,
fast,
well,
cut 'em
I've
off.
been asking Barbara, how do we get her name on it?
You know, you gotta move fast.
Texting as we speak.
It's happening, right? You're both racing to the, right, to a motion second, further discussion, understanding that how does Sausalito get a little upgrade in this
Well,
process?
whoever,
Or
it's
whoever.
equitable.
Well, I said, Mill Valley, don't put us in that pot, Chris. When you guys have $700,000, I can come knocking on the door. Motion second, discussion, opposition, motion carries unanimously. Direction to staff to look at the voting threshold, make sure we didn't do anything improper.
Well, yeah, let me just clarify something on this. I think it's helpful for me to give you all a report about how I see this working. I mean, I think as I see this here, is that basically what I saw here was a consensus of the group to agree that we won't go forward unless we have this higher number of voting.
Correct.
There's no doubt if someone wanted to push a vote under the rules, I mean, those are the rules. But I think it would be helpful for me to sort of explain the context of this. I don't think this is a question of, it could be an illegal act, but it's a question of whether or not you have the flexibility or discretion under your rules to do this or not.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think it'd be helpful for me to think about that a little bit further and then provide you with an analysis of that.
Yeah, and then the last direction to staff would be to schedule.
Can I speak to that point though?
Yes.
One thing, I think it may be a good idea, what this brings up, and I'm fine with what we're doing on that particular 75%, but it raises a larger issue. I think the straight 6 to 5 or a majority vote doesn't seem to work. The 75% may not be where we want to end up, but maybe we should have staff take a look at what might be the appropriate, let's call it supermajority in this kind of extraordinary case where we're giving out franchise fees. Because in most cases, when we vote on something, a simple majority is fine. I think in this case, we probably, it's probably appropriate to have some greater staff. I don't know what that is. I don't know if it's the 75%, but maybe you could maybe staff could take a look and maybe have a few options or recommendations. I would certainly be in favor of changing the voting on certain extraordinary items such as the franchise.
Good request, Larry.
If you use the MEA model, it's a combination of your proportion of subscribers at 50% and then your membership at 50% as a weighted vote.
Okay, good, so further direction to staff then to look at voting.
Yeah, and I think that's all fine. I think we're gonna have to come to some kind of a consensus we're all comfortable with, and I don't wanna get lost in the weeds on that, but I did wanna make the point. I think the more important direction is to get together as negotiators and sit down in the room somewhere where you've got the time and the attention to do the deal. And do it quickly and see if we can all you all can walk out of the room and bring us something back that will be a little easier.
Do you think we should, I mean, we could do that soon, I guess we could notice a special meeting if we had information to share, right? We're not coming back till December right now.
I mean, get Greg's report?
No, just if we had information that would help, I'm thinking,
sure.
I'm thinking to help San Rafael with its, you know, in Larkspur, if we got together as a negotiating team and suddenly we came up with to Jim's point, instead of 660, it's actually 475, whatever it is, and that helps everybody and helps you guys, maybe it's information sooner. I guess we can decide that as a board, and people can be flexible if we needed to meet to discuss it or just share the information. I just want to be careful on.
Right. I mean, I think leaving it set in December is good. I don't want San Rafael to feel like they're getting the bums rush.
No, I heard that.
I think we need to move. And I don't think delay, I agree with you. Delay just keeps everybody up in the air and it feeds the issue.
Yep.
You know, this agency has spent money out of its budget when it needs to do it. We spent almost $200,000 when we had to negotiate with Comcast. So we have spent money. And so, yeah, this is a little bit of a different decision, but this agency has spent money when it's needed to spend money, and it's always done well by the subscribers. So I just want to make that point. We've done it before, we can do it again, and you know, we have to have the confidence to do it. It's a good decision. This will be a good decision. I am confident myself we'll look back on with this, assuming we provide the support, which I think we all want to do. It's going to be a good decision.
Barbara?
Yeah, if I can just say, perhaps if people can keep November 13th, which is the second Wednesday in November, open, which would, you know, which is generally open for the various councils and that type of stuff, just kind of keep it in case we do need to have a meeting. That would certainly help facilitate getting it scheduled if we have an update for the board.
Yeah, okay. All right, what else? Motion to adjourn? So moved. All right, folks.
Do we have to do G?
Oh, G, MTA appointments, sorry about that. Yeah. Wow. Thank you, Sandy.
Well, she was enjoying it so much.
I got yelled at the other night for not giving public open time on something.
Oh, they're always after me for doing that.
Then the person who yelled at me didn't even stand up and speak. I want to speak on this, public open time, okay, public open time, nothing.
Hey, hold on, we have another agenda item.
Now we have one more agenda item. Yep, item G, quick staff report. Is there any opposition to Larry and Jim McCann being reappointed?
No.
Is there anybody else who wanted it?
No.
Want to make a motion, Andrew?
Yes, so moved.
Sorry.
Second.
Motion second, discussion, opposition? No? Okay, motion carries
Can I
unanimously.
just say, as far as the adjournment, let's adjourn and Karen Macklin's.
Oh, that's good.
Yes, good idea.
Yes.
Yep, very nice. Okay, so adjourned.
Larry, my question to you.